The biggest game of the night, of course, that is Providence and Villanova. We had some Field of 68 boots on the ground there with John Fanta, Jeff Goodman, trying to get in with the crowd there. But I think they have a clear bias towards Mr. Fanta, and that will continue. Villanova with the big 5-point W on the road. This was the battle of computers versus the eye test. A lot of pushback against Mr. Ken Pomeroy. The students made their feelings clear. Well, let's start with the host team here, Rob, with Providence. They're hosting. They're not able to get it done. They finally lose a game that's less than 6 points after Jared Bynum makes the three at the end there. Do we think any less of Providence after this, or is this kind of exactly what you expected?
They were 4.5-point underdogs in this game, and they lost by 5, which kind of tells you is about the way that the game was expected to be played by the people that pay attention to these kind of things. But no, I mean, it was pretty much exactly what you would expect a Providence game to be, right? They were tough. They were physical. They weren't quite as good defensively as you would want them to be. But again, they got the ball to Nate Watson down the stretch. They got the ball to Al Durham down the stretch. He made the plays you need him to be able to make down the stretch. The only difference is Colin Gillespie is awesome. Colin Gillespie is an All-American for a reason. He also happens to be about 24 years old. Jim, he might be as old as you at this point, but Randolph, I don't know if I've seen 5 individual performances this season that were more impressive than what we saw from Gillespie tonight.
Yeah, he put him on his back. I think he got a little help from a lot of different guys at certain times. Justin Moore was good for a long time as well, but Colin Gillespie tonight, man, I mean, 33, clutch shot after clutch shot when they needed a bucket. You know, he created it. I mean, he was big time tonight. I mean, like you said, I think Johnny Davis might have had a performance similar to that, maybe better, but he's been one of the 3 best that we've seen all year. That was great.
Yeah, Davis had the 37 at Purdue. That's definitely the one that stands out.
Yeah.
I mean, Gillespie, he has that post game that I think is kind of a secret for a guard, but I didn't know he could do it against Justin Minaya. That was the shocker for me, Rob. He went in there, pump faked Minaya in the air for an and one at one point. I know Mr. Fanta tweeted about how impressive that move was, but he was hitting shots inside. He was hitting them outside. I think he's been criticized in the past for not getting those clutch buckets, but he got them tonight.
Yeah, that's what the Villanova program does. I mean, Ryan Arcidiacono scored out of the post. Jalen Brunson scored out of the post. Their best teams are when they are able to invert their offense and get the ball to their guards, backing people down and bringing their big men out on the perimeter. The way that they kind of run things is like, okay, you have guards that aren't used to guarding in and around the basket, so we're going to put our guards down there. You have big guys that aren't used to guarding 3-point shooters like Omari Spellman, so we're going to let them stand out there and shoot 40% from 3. They were one of the originals to switch everything defensively. I don't know how many people back in 2016 when they won their first title were willing to put point guards on big men in the post and deal with the mismatches that you were going to end up getting. It was a very modern kind of basketball concept at the time. And I think that other people are kind of catching up a little bit. But I mean, nobody is better at doing what they do than Villanova does. And I've made this point before, but there is a mental advantage that Villanova has in games like this. Like, they don't get rattled. You walk into the dunk tonight, that was probably a top 5 environment that you're going to see in college basketball this season in terms of how loud it was, how rowdy it was, how drunk all of those students were. I mean, that place was rocking. Did you see the video of when everybody was singing Taylor Swift at the under 4 timeout? The only time that you sing Taylor Swift like that in mass is when you're hammered. All of those people were hammered in Providence that night. And I don't know if you know it even from Providence, but when they get drunk, they like to talk a little bit. They like to be loud. They like to be noisy. So that place was rocking. And it was like Colin Gillespie was out there taking practice jumpers. I mean, and it wasn't just like Justin Moore didn't get rattled at the beginning. Villanova was in control of that game throughout the entirety of it. That was quintessential Villanova right there.
Yeah, I was impressed. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought Providence just rode the wave a little too much. I thought they took some quick shots. Reeves came in, took some tough shots. Bynum came down. They were playing so much off the emotions of the crowd. And like you said, Villanova was just consistent, took good shots, stayed within themselves, and was in control of the whole game. Providence, as great as that environment was, they went on an ebb and flow with the crowd, taking some questionable shots that I thought that put them in bad, defensive transition. They couldn't get matched up a couple of times, and I thought it hurt them.
Do we think that is going to be an issue going forward for Providence, where they're not going to have that kind of a crowd on their side? Or is that something that on a neutral court in the NCAA tournament, we're not really that concerned about. They're going to be that mellow veteran team with 4 graduate seniors in their starting lineup. Rob, are you just not that worried about that aspect?
I mean, I am worried about it a little bit. What I will say is I'm a little bit more worried about the fact that Al Durham doesn't decide to show up until the final 5 minutes, right? Like I think that you need a little bit more out of him throughout. It's such a hard way to try to survive winning games by clawing back in the final minutes and winning them down the stretch. Like at some point, you just want to go out and win a game by 15 points, right? So I do think that they need to get to a point where they can kind of play the same way that they play in the final 8 minutes for the first 32 minutes of the game. It makes your life a lot less stressful to be able to do that. And you run into situations where, we talk about small sample sizes. What was the narrative every time Virginia was in the tournament? They play so few possessions, it's small sample sizes, it's easier to upset them. Well, when you're playing with Providence, it's basically like they waiting to make it an 8-minute game down the stretch. And then when you're only playing for 8 minutes, it's going to be easier for you to lose in a situation like that. So that's my only takeaway from this game. But I'm kind of, nitpicking them at that point. It just, they are what they are. They are a very, very good team. They just got beat by the team that owns the Big East at this point. I think it's just as simple as that.
So, Randolph, would you say that Villanova is kind of taken back the driver's seat in the Big East because they get to host Providence still down the stretch? Or do you think this is still kind of a toss-up? How do you see the race going down the stretch?
I think it's a toss-up. They very well could go in there and win this game in Villanova now. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination it's just over. The thing that shocked me the most is both teams are in the 80s. I thought this was going to be a low-scoring game, kind of a grinded-out game, and then they put up 170, 73 points. Like I didn't see that. So I thought we'd be, a combined 120, 125 or so, and both teams play well. Like you said, Robbie, I thought Durham got off to a really slow start. I thought I was surprised by that. He picked it up early, but again, I'm more impressed with that because again, he and Bynum are their closers, and he at least showed up. He showed up at the very, last couple minutes of the game. So they got a chance. I'm not overly concerned about it.
Yeah, I feel like we're making this about Providence and what they didn't do right. And I don't necessarily think that that's what happened in this game. I think Villanova went out there and won a game the way that Villanova does in moments like this. Right. To me, the narrative of this game and the storyline that should be coming out of this game is Colin Gillespie made his claim to be the best point guard in college basketball. Colin Gillespie showed everybody why Villanova is what's the phrase that a Fortune 500 company or whatever, why they are a machine that runs the way that they run. And to me, the storyline is that Villanova stake their claim to being the best team in the Big East. And that's the end of it. Providence did what they do. They are as good as they are. I don't think any less of them from this performance. It just, they got their ass kicked by Villanova. A lot of teams have experienced that.
Yeah, Providence shot 65% inside the arc. Like they didn't do anything wrong. They might have exposed Villanova's interior defense. That's definitely a concern for them going forward. But
I mean, they could have switched a little bit better on Gillespie when he got those 2 open threes.
I mean, how many times they do that? Like, come on.
Yeah, he had the late one where he got somebody to fly by, and that like I think under a minute left, and that felt like the dagger. All right, let's. Anything else we want to cover from this game? And we've got the Big East race. Do you have which one do you think has a better chance of going deep in March? Let's just hit that real quick. Obviously, the predictive analytics like Villanova more, but Providence has shown the ability to win close games. They have the veteran experience. They have Ed Cooley on the sideline. RC, do you have a team that you think it has a little bit of an edge in March based on what you saw tonight?
I still like Providence. The thing that concerns me with Villanova, again, is the inconsistency shooting from the perimeter. Tonight, Gillespie shot lights out. Justin Moore was great. I just would like to see more from their other guys. I mean, from Slater, he was solid tonight, didn't miss a shot. But I'd like to see more consistency from the other guys. And if they don't hit shots from three, which come and go, they struggle.
Yeah, the demise of Jermaine Samuel's three-point shooting is a really concerning story for them. Hasn't hit more than 1 3 in a game in, I think, 2 months, and he's down to 23% from deep. That's a problem, not having him stretch the floor. Rob, how do you see those two in March?
I honestly don't love either of them in March because I think at some point you need to have pros, you need to have NBA talent, you need to have guys that can go out and win a game on their own. And I know I'm kind of speaking out of both sides of my mouth when I say that, and then you go and watch Colin Gillespie do what he did tonight. But I do think that part of the reason why he was able to thrive is that Providence does not have a backcourt that is super long and super athletic. Like Jared Bynum kind of is what he is. And Al Durham is honestly, I feel like Al Durham would have been a great Villanova basketball player, right? Just kind of the way that he's built and the way that he wants to play. So I don't love either of these teams as potential national title contenders or teams that can necessarily make it to the Final Four.
Yeah, but this Villanova team feels a little more like 2014, 2015 when Wright got upset in the second round. People were riding him for not winning in the tournament. And then suddenly he had a couple of pros and 2 national titles in his pocket. And that certainly turns things around.
Think about the guys they had on those teams that won the titles. Like it was Ryan Arcidiacono's been in the NBA since he left school. Like 6 years in the league is a long time in the league. Jalen Brunson was National Player of the Year, a McDonald's All-American, and I think he was like 32nd pick. Dante DiVincenzo was a mid-first round pick. Mikal Bridges didn't he go 10th?
Yeah, lottery pick,
11th.
Yeah.
Amari Spellman was the 30th pick in the draft. They had Josh Hart, who was a first round pick that is still playing in the NBA. Like they had pros on pros on pros on pros on both of those teams. And I don't know if there's a guy on this roster that's going to play in the NBA.
Yeah, that's what, like, if they make the run, maybe suddenly they become pro prospects, but that would require them getting to a gear that I don't think they have shown quite yet. I mean, the at Baylor game is still lurking in my mind of that offensive performance that was not great.